Welcome back, Shalloners, and welcome back, Dash Dolls. Today, we're going to talk about news I genuinely did not see coming. Scott Disick going to rehab. But then again, he's already out. We're going to break down what's going on behind the scenes with Scott, some stuff you might not have heard. But more than that, we're going to talk about a question you guys really had centered around this whole thing. Can you fix a guy? Can a bad guy change into a good one? Can you fix a fuckboy? Can you fix an addict? What if your ex is having substance issues or just regular life issues? Should you be there for them? We're going to break all of this down, sort it all out so that you guys have a toolbox if you encounter a situation like this. Or maybe we can just pass this along to Kourtney. But first, just want to remind you guys that if you have a question for me, you want to talk one-on-one about any little thing, find me on my website, shallonlester.com, and click Get Help. Also, if you would like a video shout-out, maybe for a birthday, you need a pep talk, you want a question answered that way, find me on Cameo at ShallonXO. And on Instagram at ShallonXO, where I let you guys weigh on this topic. I put it out there. I was like, hey, like what does this kick up for you, this Scott rehab news? And you came up with some incredible insights and questions. So that's where we get this from. So connect with me that way. So here's what's going on with Scott. Like I said, I did not see this coming. We all lived through like the golden age of his bullshit. Do you know what I mean? Where it was the classic shoving the money into the waiter's mouth. Wow. Well, that lived in infamy. This is my Scott Disick story. When I was at Star, our entertainment editor at the time was in Atlantic City with his wife, and Scott Disick happened to be there. He was like hosting something, and he was walking by them in the casino. And of course, like Matt knew who he was. Like, hello, we do this for a living. And also, it's like, okay, there he is. It's not like we don't get like starstruck in this business, you know. But Scott like dropped something, and his wife was like, "Oh, excuse me, like you dropped," and Scott turned on her and fucking turned on her. He's like, "What did you fucking say to me, bitch?" Just lost his mind. He was wasted and sweaty. And Matt, our editor, who's just like, he like loves baseball. He's like a real he's just like not a pretentious person at all, and is the last person to be like, "Don't you know who I am?" But he's like, "Dude, just apologize to just take it down a notch. Just apologize to my wife." He's like, "Who the fuck are you? You want to get fucking popped in the mouth? I can fucking buy you and sell you." Just crazy things. And Matt was like, "I'm really not trying to play this card with you, bro, but like I'm telling you, you don't know who I am, and I'm telling you, you don't want to act like this. Just say you're sorry. Just apologize or forget the whole thing." And Matt definitely doesn't look like, you know, like, oh, the typical like editor in New York City. He looks like a dude bro. And Scott just would not let it go. Like he doubled down. He doubled down in a casino on his bullshit behavior. And Matt was like, okay. And it was the cover story the next week. It was the cover story. Scott's meltdown in a casino, or whatever the headline was. And it's like, ugh. So we have seen firsthand stuff that isn't even on camera that like this kid has got a lot of volatility inside of him. And it's like, he just didn't seem like that guy anymore. Like he just kind of gotten his shit together, or just sort of like it was a fire that burned itself out. Like he just was like, I'm too old and too tired. He broke up with Kourtney. That seemed to help. I honestly think that them breaking up helped him center himself, but we'll talk about how. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, like now he heads to rehab. He's been to rehab before, though. He has been to rehab before, but like none of us really saw this coming. He hasn't been like out partying that we've seen. He hasn't been posting insane things on social media. Typically what we see as usual, like celebrity warning signs. But nonetheless, news broke that Scott was in rehab up in Colorado. And here's the thing. Here's why he's not in rehab. Because it's not just that the news broke. It's that a picture of him in there leaked. Someone at the facility took a picture of him during like intake. It looked like he was in prison. He was sitting in like, you know, a sweatsuit, probably talentless, brand sponsorships, right? And like doing his like orientation or something, but he had to be quarantined for a few days. Can you imagine anything more isolating and lonely than like, okay, I'm going to go to rehab. This is going to be so hard for me, but I'm also going to be completely isolated. Like, damn. But so Scott, when he found out that the photo had leaked, that people were circulating, he checked out instantaneously, and now he's going to sue. So let's see what TMZ has to say about this, because TMZ says Scott was in the All Points North Lodge in Edwards, Colorado since last Tuesday, and reports he's there for cocaine and alcohol abuse. He struggled with substance abuse in the past. But Scott's lawyer, Marty Singer, I have dealt with Marty Singer. He is a fucking nightmare. He is a nightmare. Orange man. He says Scott is not there. He said, not there for coke and booze. Marty says, in an effort to finally come to terms and deal with the pain that Scott has been silently suffering for many years due to the sudden death of his mother, followed by the death of his father 3 months later, Scott made the decision to check himself into a rehab facility last week to work on his past traumas. Of course. It's very interesting that episode about Scott just aired on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, where Kourtney's talking about, and Scott, like the pain of losing both your parents in 3 months. His mom died in 2013 after an illness, and then his father died like 3 months later for, unspecified reasons, and you just can't help but wonder if he died of a broken heart. And it's just to go from having two parents to being an orphan in 3 months. I don't care how old you are when your parents die. If both of them die, you feel like an orphan. You might as well be 6. It's awful. I can't imagine what he would be going through. And I also know that, I know because I know how the human mind works, that fueled so much of his behavior. So it's interesting that Marty was like, he's not there for a substance. He's there for the pain. Honey, if you're in rehab, you're there for the substance and you're there for the pain. They walk hand in hand. So Scott has obviously been suffering and using substances to anesthetize himself. That's why people are addicts. They're trying to push down something and take some sort of anesthesia, And it's funny, like when people go to rehab or when they get out of rehab, I have a friend whose other good friend is coming home from rehab after she was, an alcoholic for like 15 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, you must feel so good. And she's like, I'm worried for her because now the real work begins. All she's done now is try to remove that top layer, which is the alcohol, Now she's tackling the root. We always talk about that psychological splinter, that if you don't pull out a regular splinter in your hands or whatever, and it is going to fester. We know this. It's like, I got to get it out because if not, it's just going to burrow deeper. It's going to hurt. It's going to throb. I'm going to be like, do you have to chop it off? I'm in pain. But you also know that you don't really want to pull that splinter out. It's just kind of in there. You might have to dig a little with the tweezers and your mom. But you know that you got to get it out so it doesn't fester. Traumas, same thing. Same thing. And Scott has been dealing with this psychological splinter, probably several of them, for a very, very long time. And I think it's interesting that after he broke up with Kourtney, who was just always calling him on his bullshit, he dated Sophia, who was 19, had very little dating experience. I mean, the only person she dated before that was Justin Bieber in the height of his messiness. So it's like she was a little used to the crazy. And so she looked at Scott and maybe didn't see the red flags that another 35-year-old woman would have seen in Scott and been like, no, thank you. I mean, I think she's actually been kind of good for him. He seems like he's been chilled out, and Sophia seems very mature. And like when I see her on the Kardashians or when I see interviews with her, I was like, oh, she's like very poised. I think Richie is, who can? Lionel, her mama though is nuts. Mom's nuts. But Lionel seems like a good dad. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes with Scott. And I am sure that Kourtney's impulse is to rush in and save him. But let's just talk some facts real quick. Let's talk some facts. Because the big thing you guys asked was, can a man change if he's a drug addict? Can a man change if he's an alcoholic? Can a man change if he's just a plain fuckboy, if he's a cheater, if he's a liar, if he's a gambler? Let's talk about some facts of drug addiction, okay? So the National Institute of Drug Abuse, that's drugabuse.gov, has a chart about relapse between substance use disorders, but also comparing it to other chronic illnesses. So the relapse rate of substance use disorders is between 40 and 60%. Now the whole point of this website is you can overcome your drug addiction. Here's how to get some help, as it should be, right? But they compare it to chronic illnesses such as hypertension, which is high blood pressure, and asthma. And both of those have a relapse rate of 50 to 70%. And I'm like, I wouldn't say that I relapsed if I had an asthma attack. I do have asthma. I wouldn't say that someone with high blood pressure relapsed. I think that's an odd term to apply to a medical condition that is not purposeful. I mean, in a way. You can do things in your life that contribute to high blood pressure. You can be all gassed up. You can eat a bunch of fucking salt. You can do things that contribute to your asthma. You can maybe not take your medicine. I can't work out outdoors. Like I can't run outdoors. I get an asthma attack. But I don't think those are the same as going out and buying Coke and chopping it up into lines and rolling up 100 and snorting it. That seems very purposeful. Very purposeful. Of course, addiction is an illness, and of course, addiction is a disease, but there is a high degree of choice involved in that, where there is far less choice involved in an asthma attack or high blood pressure or like diabetes, right? So I think this was a very strange thing. So I did a little bit more research because I wanted to know, like, what is the relapse rate? So a doctor he's a psychologist. So an addiction psychiatrist named Dr. Omar Manijwala, nice name. He's hot too. And he's also the chief medical officer of Catesis and author of Craving: Why We Can't Seem to Get Enough. So he's definitely an addiction specialist. He recapped this study that I looked up. I'll put the link in there. It's very, very dry. But it was from, let me see. The study is published on Sage Journals and the U.S. National Library of Medicine and National Institutes of Health, blah, blah, blah. It's dry. But he recapped this study, and his recap was correct based on my understanding of this study. And when I read it, I paid to read it. You have to subscribe to these journals. And I do. I find them interesting. So this has been one of the most thorough attempts to understand alcoholics and addicts and their relapse rates. It was an 8-year study of 1,200 addicts, and they were able to follow 94% of people who participated in the study, which is huge. That's huge. And they found that if you can have long-term sobriety for a good chunk of time, your chances of staying sober are huge. Let's break this down. So only a third of people who were sober for less than a year will stay sober. So if you can't, basically a year is like the cutoff. For those people who achieve a year of sobriety, only less than half will relapse. That's pretty good. If you can make it to 5 years of sobriety, the study found, your chance of relapse is less than 15%. So a year is this really big metric. You got to keep your shit together for a year. And it's funny because they say it takes 21 days to form a habit. Okay, well, apparently it takes 365 days to break an addiction. To really flush out all the bad things in your life, the bad people, the triggering events, to build those coping mechanisms, and to influx healthier things so that after a year, your life hopefully is flipped upside down in a positive, healthy way, that you have replaced all the bad things with good things. You know how to manage the cravings. You know how to do all these things. So Scott's got a long road ahead of him, and he's been down this road. And I know that's what sucks is you go to rehab, you think it's going to be once, it's not. When I worked at the New York Daily News, I was a gossip writer and reporter there. I realized one day, it was the most stressful job I've ever had. It was terrible. But I realized that my insurance covered rehab, and I was like, I have to go. I will think of a reason on the plane. I'll think of a reason. I don't know. I probably take more Adderall than I should. I don't need a lot. But I so regret not going. Rehab sounds amazing in that your only job is to work on yourself. That is such a gift. Well, it's not a gift. It's got a $30,000 fucking week price tag. So I understand why Scott checked out of this bullshit facility if they're leaking his photos. You want me to open up my soul and my mind and bare everything, and you're snapping photos of me? Get bent. You're getting a lawsuit. Fully get that. But I still wish I had taken advantage of the chance to go to an intensive spell of therapy. And that's what we talk about when we talk about this quarantine. I've done a lot of videos on quarantine. We're going to talk about this more in the quarantine glow up video that's coming. But this kind of is like rehab, if you want it to be. And actually, reports say that that's sort of what prompted Scott to go to rehab is quarantine. He's been by himself and he has had time to think. And good for him for coming to the conclusion, some shit's got to change. I can't live like this. Because I know what a lot of us are experiencing is an absence of those vices. And your vice might not be Coke. Your vice might not be alcohol or opiates or meth or whatever it is. Opiates and meth, those are different. But I bet maybe it's seeing your friends, being able to go to the mall and just Buy a lip gloss at Sephora if you really need to pick yourself up. These little things that aren't negative coping mechanisms, but they are coping mechanisms and distractions. They're gone. And what are we left with? Ourselves. I'm going to do a second video on this topic about how we can confront our demons in quarantine. But that's not what we're talking about today because you guys voted and this is the number one topic you wanted to see. We're going to talk about, can you fix a man? What do you do if you're with a dude who is getting to this point, or you see it, or you just want to fix him? Short answer, no, you can't fix him. Long answer, still no, you can't fix him. I think the best thing Kourtney ever did for Scott was to leave him. I've said before that I think the dynamic between them was, obviously it was very toxic. I'm not like saying anything revolutionary, but I think she stayed with him as long as she did because she had the power. And I view Kourtney as being very, very power-based. I like Kourtney. I think she's great, but she is very much into the upper hand. I think she picks fights with her sister so she can feel like the victim and act like the victim and then exert power. You know, she says snarky, passive-aggressive things so that they lash out and then she can have the power of being the one to like laugh and walk away, right? And I think with Scott, he was such a mess that no matter what she did, it paled in comparison. So she got to do whatever she wanted. He was up here, and as long as she just stayed here, hey, she could do whatever she wants. She can get pregnant and not tell him, not consult him about that. I think that's a risk. It works out fine for her because she's so rich. It doesn't matter. You can have 10 babies. It doesn't matter really if your baby daddy's around. But for the rest of us, I wouldn't recommend that tactic. But yeah, she always got to have the upper hand no matter what. And so when she was doing that, it created that parent-child dynamic. And oh my God, we have that all the time. We talk about this all the time, the parent-child dynamic. And if you're looking at a boyfriend or a fuck boy or an ex and thinking, I can fix you. I know what to do. You know where you've heard that? Your mama saying that to you. Your daddy saying that to you. Your big sister saying that to you. Please just listen to me. You're doing this wrong. Let me just do this for you. That's what a parent says to a child. That's what a parent is supposed to say to a child. Let me help you. I can fix this. Let me make your life better. Let me keep you alive. Are you dating your son? Are you parenting a boyfriend? No, these things get crossed. And what happens when we enter into a parent-child dynamic, we get very, very resentful and we get very, very unsexually attracted to this person. And you might not realize that that's happening. And maybe that's not happening on your end, but it might be happening on his end. But even if it's not, even if y'all are boning like crazy, it's so toxic, it's so unhealthy, and it is so fucking pointless. It does not work. So if you're looking at an ex and you're thinking, okay, it seems like he's changed. Has he changed? What can I do to get him to change? I understand now that I can't plug in. Shallon's right. I can't just go down this road with him. I can't do his emotional homework for him. He truly has to do it himself. What is the best way to get a guy to change? Truly, it's leaving. Truly, it's leaving. Remember when I said that the best thing to happen to Scott was Kourtney leaving him? That's because that was a fucking wake-up call for him. Mommy was gone, little boy was on his own, and little boy had to figure it out, right? Because they were locked in this cycle together. They were both mutually toxic at this point. They got to the point where it's like, who can even tell who's the perpetrator, who's the good guy, and who's the bad guy? You're both contributing to this unhealthy dynamic so much that it's not even about good and bad, it's about healthy and unhealthy, and you're both unhealthy. But when she walked away and said, I'm not gonna do this, I'm not doing this, he was forced to grow up. I was reading an article the other day in, I think it was Popular Science or Scientific American, about how baby boomers, that generation, are dealing with their kids who are opiate addicts and how tough love is like the thing that is starting, they're getting to that point because they have to, because financially they're so wiped out from like 4, 5, 10 rehab stays, getting their car out of being impounded, paying their hospital bills when they do all this stuff. And it was an interview with all these parents who were just, I felt so bad for these people. They were just like fraught over their kids, like just downward spiral. And they were like, we couldn't keep bailing Dylan out. We couldn't keep doing it. And they were talking with the parents, but they were also talking with the kids. And they were talking with these kids and they're like, I remember I called my mom, I had OD'd, or I got in a car accident because I was high, whatever it was. I was in the hospital and they're like, I hope you feel better. I called them from jail. I'll see you at your trial. And it was this like, it was this splash of water in their face that, hey, no one's coming to your rescue anymore. You got to start rescuing yourself. You don't get to act like this. The elasticity is gone. And you're probably not dealing with an ex who's like an oxy addict or whatever, or a current, whatever it is. But you might be dealing with just a fuckboy. Just a dude who's like, I don't know if I'm ready for commitment. I don't know. I'm tired. Whatever bullshit. Fill in the blank, whether it's drugs, alcohol, commitment, whatever. When you are the one to stand up and say, I don't think so. I don't think so. We're all done here. We're all stocked up. I've taught you how to treat me like this, but today starts a new lesson. That's a splash of cold water. No one can miss you if they haven't lost you. And if they haven't lost you, they're not learning anything from the situation. A healthy person doesn't need to lose you to learn. A healthy person gets the memo, date one, this chick is a valuable bird. I'm going to keep her in my life. I'm going to respect her and cherish her and listen to her and nurture her and be the man she needs me to be. I don't need for her to keep dumping me to get this memo. So that in and of itself, if that's the point you're at, that's a data point and it's a red flag. But if you truly want a man to change, that's what you have to do. I was actually talking like so random, like out of nowhere, like with this ex I had, and he was just such a mess. And I finally hit the wall and I was like, done. And I just like walked away from him. And he's like, that was the turning point in my life, because I knew that I had to be better. I knew that I had to face my demons. I knew I had to deal with a toxic family, but it was when I lost you that all of those things had a manifestation. All of those like, those issues, they're manageable, they're sucky, but I can outrun them. They funneled down to a very real thing, which was you walking out of my life. And that's when I got sober. That's when I like got my shit together. He does therapy twice a week. He's like going on yoga retreats. I see a huge shift in this person. And just in the way that he's talking about his own demons is completely different. Because before it was like, I have to be better to get you back. And I'm like, you need to be better for you. And that's the shift that I've noticed. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe someday in the future, he will get me back. Who knows? We don't know where the world is going to lead us. And I truly believe that there is no impossible reversal if someone is going to do the work. You can't save a man who doesn't want to save himself. He has to want it. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And there is nothing more frustrating in this world than dealing with someone who doesn't want to be better. Who doesn't want to be better. I'm sure you have friends who are like, I'm so fat. Should we get mozzarella sticks? And you're like, Christy, yes, we can get mozzarella sticks, but I don't want to fucking hear you talk about how fat you are then for the rest of the day. It's like, pick a side, pick a lane, right? I don't want to deal with the fuckboy dynamic and just have excuse after excuse, or have someone who simply doesn't want to change. So before you think you can fix someone, you have to ask yourself, does he even want to be fixed? I talk to you all the time, and so much of the time, and God knows I've done this too, which is why I can recognize it. We are making excuses for men and situations that don't even have the decency and the respect to make excuses for themselves. Oh, he's busy, he's tired, he's this, it's his family, but. Is he saying that? Oh, no. I'm saying that. I am filling in the blanks for him, giving him this get out of jail free card, and guess what? He's getting out of fucking jail for free. And when people get out of jail for free, they haven't learned a lesson. They haven't paid their debt to society. They're not reformed. They're just out and they're ready to do it again. We are letting people get away with things over and over again because we're enabling it, because we think we can fix it. We think that's our job. What actually needs to be fixed in your life? What really needs to change? What are you running from? You're putting that energy and that effort into someone else. Why? Because the problems you do have seem insurmountable? His problems are insurmountable. Not for him. He could fix his own problems. They're insurmountable for you. You're trying to drive a car that someone else is behind the wheel of. You're standing on the sidelines going, brake, left, right, turn. They're in the driver's seat, sweetheart. All you can do is shout from the sidelines, and that doesn't really get you too far. Did you win the last Super Bowl? No, the players did. They were the ones playing it. You were just spectating. And we understand that in that example. We understand that in the car example. But for some reason, when we love someone or we're like codependent on them, that gets very lost. That gets very muddled. And it's because we are trying to outrun our own car, right? We are trying to get away from something in our life that needs attention, our health and fitness, family trauma that's unresolved, a career that's stagnating, a lack of female friends, just an overall low self-esteem situation. So we think if we can fix this guy, if we can rehab, flip this house, flip it like Disick, now we've got something to show for our efforts. Now our life has meaning. Our life has meaning, first of all, already, if we choose it to have meaning. Our life has meaning, and it has that feeling of pride when we focus on ourselves. Dating isn't 50-50, it's 100-100, right? And if you think fixing him doesn't erode who you are, you're wrong. Let's say you get him to 100, now you're 25, baby girl. You have given your time, your perky tit ears, all of this stuff to a man who what? Again, like, what's the payoff there? A healthy relationship? You could have a healthy relationship with someone else. What the actual prize is that you're chasing is a distraction from your own life. If you pour all of your light onto someone else in a shadow, you're in the shadow now. But that's okay, because if you fix him, now your life has meaning. It's like people who are evangelical, like they find Jesus or, whatever, they're in a cult and they're like, I have to convert people. I have to convert people because it validates their existence. If we can pour all of our energy into someone else, clearly my life has meaning now. No one's going to ask me what I'm doing with my life. I'm fixing Jeff. Okay, this is what actually happens. This is what actually plays out. Turns out there's no Captain Save-A-Ho, job in the military. That's not a rank. It goes like general, colonel, captain. There is a captain, but it is not of saving a hoe. It is merely a captain. You do other things. It's not that. So if you're waiting for some sort of martyrdom prize at the end of the year, some sort of parade where you get to like waddle down the street in Washington, D.C., nailed to a cross and everyone gets to adore you, it's actually not going to happen, boo. All you're going to do is waste your time and break your own heart. I know, because I've been there. This is what actually happens when you try to save a man. They get resentful. They don't really want to be dating their mom either. You're nagging me. You're jealous. You're paranoid. Who cares if I'm out with my friends? Why are you like this? And from your point of view, it's like, I'm just trying to help you. Like a mom would say to their child, right? I'm just trying to keep you safe, honey. Please don't drink and drive. Please wear your seatbelt. I just want to keep you alive. Let's say, though, that it does work. Let's say that you can actually fix a man. That you say this like, magical thing. And he's like, I'm just healed. I'm healed. Shallelujah. Do you know what he does then? Thanks. I'm whole again. Well, bye. I fall in love with my secretary. They leave. Oh, they leave. Do you know why? Because they have associated their old self, their broken, shitty, addicted, whatever self, with you. That guy is the same as you. And if they're going to leave that guy behind, they got to leave you behind too. So you have now wasted weeks, months, years, perhaps decades on someone who turns around and is like, thanks, see you at your martyrdom parade. And then they go. And you are left with so much resentment. I talk to you guys about this when you submit your questions on my website all day long. He said he was upset. He said he was anxious. I was trying to plug in. I was trying to help him. Then he started cheating on me. Then we broke up and he's got a brand new girlfriend and they're engaged. What the fuck? I'm like, yeah, what the fuck? What you were doing was free labor. And people don't really respect free labor. They treat volunteers kind of shitty. So if you really want to change a dude, if you really want to fix all of this, you have to walk away. You have to mean it, and you have to let him reach his own conclusions. Because it's going to go one of two ways. Either this is going to be a wake-up call for him that, oh, mom girl is not going to come bail me out, like literally from jail or from just my myriad of traumas. Oh, I got in a fight with my Uber driver and I want to tell you about it. It's like, I don't want to hear about it. Or he's not. And either way, you cannot be a front row seat for that. If he's not going to change, then you definitely need to get out. You definitely need to get out. All the more reason. And if you do want him to change, you really do think that's possible, because it is, then this is going to expedite that process. Walking away is the surest, closest, fastest way to actually getting back together. I promise you. It sounds counterintuitive. It sounds so painful. It's going to be so painful. You are in pain. I'm going to be alone. You are alone. You just don't know it yet. It's time to, at least if we're going to be sad and in pain, be sad in service of healing. Be sad towards freedom. And now we can look around for someone who's better and fulfills us and hotter with a bigger dick, right? We can do that now. Not by staying in a relationship that is simply not working. So no, you can't fix someone. You can encourage them to fix themselves from a very safe distance. But the best wake-up call to fix ourselves is loss. And that might need to be what he goes through. Not as a bluff, because you truly do need to move forward into a future that you deserve. For more, click like and subscribe. And like I said, follow me on Instagram at ShallonXO, where I let you weigh in on the topics and vote and suggest things and connect with other Shalloners. And if you have a love question of your own, find me on my website, shallonlester.com, and click Get Help.